are back with comedian David Boyle, and I'm quitting alcohol. So we are back with the Wisdom of Evan, which I should probably cancel because ever since I started the Wisdom of Evan, traffic to the podcast, I think they're hiding me. The impressions, which I can see after the second week of doing the Evan Sovereign shit, dropped off dramatically. That's not listeners checking out. That is impressions being hidden. That is the podcast being hidden. But who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? We are here to educate, entertain, and talk about my rig. And today it is education time with the Wisdom of Evan. So this week you don't need to worry about moving to Saudi Arabia. You don't need to argue about whether you're free or not. This is purely financial. This is about gold. I find this particular article very fucking interesting. So let's begin. I might pop in and out of this one. There's a couple of little things that might need explaining, but maybe I won't. Who knows? I'll feel it as we go. Anyway, this is about gold, and the article from Cold State Capital is called The Circuit That Rewires Global Finance. There is a mechanism taking shape right now that most financial commentary is not covering because it requires understanding three systems simultaneously, and most analysts only understand one. I am going to lay it out as simply as I can because once you see it, it changes how you read everything else. Most countries in the world run trade deficits with China, meaning they buy more from China than they sell. This means they do not naturally accumulate yuan through trade. If those countries want to buy oil from Iran or Russia, who are increasingly pricing their oil in yuan and settling through China's CIPS payment system rather than the Western SWIFT system, they need to get their hands on yuan somehow. But the yuan is not freely traded like the dollar. China maintains capital controls on its mainland financial system. So how do you get yuan if you do not have a trade surplus with China? The answer is gold. The Shanghai Gold Exchange International Board allows foreign participants to deliver physical gold and receive yuan in return. So the circuit works like this. A country uses its dollars to buy physical gold on the international market. It delivers that gold to Shanghai and in exchange receives yuan, and then uses that yuan to buy Iranian or Russian oil through CIPS. The oil seller, Iran in this case, receives yuan that was generated by the delivery of physical gold to China. So Iran is effectively selling its oil for gold, with yuan as the accounting unit in between. China is happy with this arrangement because every ounce of gold that enters Shanghai strengthens China's reserves and gives Beijing leverage over the gold to oil ratio, the gold to yuan ratio, and by extension, the gold to dollar ratio. Meanwhile, China never risks a currency crisis because the yuan in circulation is backed by physical gold flowing into its vaults. And this is reinforced by Russia also selling oil for yuan through the same channel. The critical detail is that China only accepts physical gold through the Shanghai exchange, not the paper gold credits that trade in London. In the London bullion market, most gold ownership is not actual metal in a vault with your name on it. It is an entry on a bank's ledger, an unallocated credit backed by a mixture of some physical gold, a lot of derivative hedges, and the assumption that not everyone will demand their metal at the same time. Every ounce of physical gold that moves from the west to Shanghai through this circuit is an ounce that is no longer available to back those paper claims in London. The paper claims stay on the books, but the physical metal underneath them shrinks. Over time, the ratio of paper promises to the actual metal widens, and the credibility of the entire London gold system comes under pressure. This gives China an extraordinary structural lever against the Western financial system because it is not attacking the system directly. It is simply draining the physical foundation that the system's paper layer depends on, one gold delivery at a time. Now, here is why this does not play out as fast as the physical flow analysis suggests, and this is where the Western financial infrastructure's real defensive capability lives. The institutions that run the London gold market do not need a 1-to-1 ratio of physical gold to paper claims. They need enough physical metal to meet whatever delivery demands arrive on any given day, plus a set of financial instruments that manage their net exposure to everything else. As long as actual requests for physical delivery remain manageable relative to available inventory, the system functions regardless of what the aggregate ratio looks like on paper. The Western financial infrastructure has several tools to keep this system running well beyond the point where the underlying physical position would suggest it should have broken. The first tool is making physical delivery expensive and inconvenient. Through lease rates, storage fees, delivery premiums, and administrative friction, the system discourages participants from converting their paper gold claims into actual metal. Most institutional investors do not want to deal with the logistics of physical gold. They want the price exposure. As long as the paper product gives them that exposure cheaply and conveniently, they stay in the paper system and never test whether the metal behind it is actually there. The second tool is price management through the derivatives markets. The COMEX Futures Exchange and the London over-the-counter forward market trade volumes of paper gold that dwarf physical delivery by orders of magnitude. This paper market is where the minute-by-minute gold price is set. By managing positioning in this paper market, Western institutions can influence the gold price in ways that narrow the arbitrage between London and Shanghai. If the price gap between the two markets stays small, the incentive to move physical gold eastward is reduced. The drain continues, but at a slower pace. The third tool is synthetic gold products. Gold-linked ETFs, tokenized gold, structured notes, and other instruments satisfy investor demand for gold exposure without requiring any physical metal at all. Every dollar that flows into an iShares Gold ETF or a similar product instead of into actual physical gold purchase is a dollar that creates no delivery pressure on London's physical inventory. These products absorb demand into the paper layer and act as a buffer protecting the physical base. The fourth tool, and the one most people overlook, is central bank gold lending. Western-aligned central banks that hold physical gold in London and New York vaults can lend that gold to bullion banks through lease agreements. This puts the metal back into the available supply pool without the central bank giving up ownership. On paper, the central bank still holds its reserves. In practice, the gold is being used by the bullion bank to meet delivery obligations or back paper positions. As long as the Western central banks are willing to lend their gold into the market, the physical inventory can be replenished even as metal flows to Shanghai, buying time for the paper system. The net effect of these four tools is that the Western financial infrastructure can extend the viability of the paper gold system well beyond the point where a pure physical analysis would predict its collapse. The transnational private sector is essentially doing with gold what it does with every financial system it operates, building a sophisticated paper layer on top of a physical reality that allows the system to function long after the fundamentals underneath it would otherwise force a reckoning. But extension is not prevention. Every ounce of physical gold that moves from London to Shanghai is an ounce that is permanently gone from the Western system. The paper tools slow the drain, they do not reverse it. The same fractional reserve logic that makes the system resilient under normal conditions makes it fragile under stress. If a major holder of paper gold, a sovereign wealth fund, a central bank, a large institution demands physical delivery at scale and the metal is not there, the confidence break is not gradual, it is instantaneous. The system does not degrade slowly, it holds until it snaps. China appears to understand this dynamic perfectly. It is not trying to crash the London gold market. It is patiently draining the physical foundation one delivery at a time, letting the transnational private sector paper tools extend the system's life and waiting for either the drain to reach a critical threshold or for a crisis to trigger the kind of large-scale delivery demand that exposes the gap between paper and physical. The Iran war, the oil shock, the financial volatility, all of these increase the probability of exactly that kind of crisis event. Remember that physical gold is finite. The above ground supply is approximately 212,000 tons. London's estimated vault holdings have been declining. Shanghai's have been rising. Central bank purchases are running at historically elevated levels and flowing disproportionately into non-Western vaults. The direction is singular. The only variable is pace. The transnational private sector is not fighting for victory. It is fighting for time. And time for an entity that extracts a percentage of every transaction it touches is literally money. And it converts that money into a pivot. The transnational private sector's honest strategic calculus at this point is not how do we stop this, it is how do we extract maximum value during the transition and how do we position ourselves inside whatever system replaces this one, and how do we ensure that when the paper layer finally breaks, we are holding real assets rather than the paper claims we sold to everyone else. And if you want to know whether the transnational private sector is already executing that calculus, look at what BlackRock and the other major institutional managers have been doing with their own balance sheets over the past 3 years. They are not increasing their exposure to paper gold products. They are building physical asset infrastructure, real estate, energy assets, data centers, and direct commodity positions. They are quietly moving their own holdings from the paper layer to the physical layer while continuing to sell the paper layer to their clients. That tells you everything you need to know about what the people who run the system actually think about the system's long-term viability. Well, did you find that interesting? I found that fascinating. So basically, the difference between the US government and the Chinese government is the US government just prints dollars and other countries use those dollars to make payments. But if you want to finalize a payment in the Chinese yuan, to get those yuan, you have to sell those US dollars, which actually weakens the US currency, and then you buy gold with those dollars and you drive to Shanghai with your gold and say, "Excuse me, Mr. Xi, can I have some yuan?" And then he looks at how much gold you've got and then prints that amount of yuan. So essentially the yuan that you're using for international trade is backed by gold, but obviously yuan internally gets printed the same way the US prints money as well. But very fascinating, which means like the more trade that is finalized in the yuan, the more gold that will be siphoned into China until, like Evan said, that the system realizes this and it just snaps. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. That'll do for tonight, and I'll see you the fuck later.